Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our GMAT prep session. I'm Lindsay Spoonmore. I'm one of the Associate Directors of Admissions for Kelley Direct Online Programs. And today I'm joined by Romnik Alik from GMAT. He is here to talk to you about all of your GMAT test questions. We will be taking questions in the Q&A feature here on the platform that we're using today. And so with no further ado, I will go ahead and let you get started.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. Welcome everybody to today's session on understanding and preparing for the GMAT exam. Just really quickly before we get started, GMAT, we own MBA.com, so we always do surveys for a chance to win a voucher for a $50 gift card towards the GMAT exam. So when you get a chance, you can fill out a survey. So what I want to talk about today is kind of today's agenda about the GMAT exam, what we're going to cover. I'm going to talk about how the GMAT exam is used in the application process, why the GMAT is an accurate predictor of success, and why admissions officers utilize the exam as part of the process. And then kind of get into the nuts and bolts of the exam, how it's structured, basic facts and myths about the GMAT exam. I'm sure you guys have questions about. And then how to best prepare for the GMAT exam. We are the stewards of the assessment. We don't have prep courses, but we have prep materials, practice exams, which I will cover later in today's session of kind of how to access those resources. So let me go ahead and kind of get started. Just quickly, a brief overview. So I work for the Graduate Management Admission Council, GMAT. And again, we are the stewards or makers of the GMAT exam. We also own MBA.com, so that's where you will go to register for the exam and get resources, and I'll touch on that shortly later in this presentation. But we also are a leading research institute, and also we have a lot of resources finding out about business schools, the application process, and kind of resources there. So why the GMAT exam? So 90% of applicants that were admitted into graduate management education programs, they took the GMAT exam. So again, I'm going to talk about why it has been the most trusted exam by admissions officers for the last 80 plus years. So, some common emotions. I'm sure many of you guys are feeling some of these emotions when it comes to preparing for the GMAT exam. Stress, frustration, anxiety. But what I'd like everybody to do on today's webinar is to kind of have a new perspective. So look at the GMAT exam not just as a barrier, but it's an opportunity for you to kind of showcase your skills and compensate for areas on your application that you can't control. So for example, your undergrad major is something you can't control, change at this amount of year. Your number of work experience are what they are. But the GMAT exam gives you an opportunity to showcase kind of areas and highlight areas on your application that you want admissions officers to consider. So again, the GMAT exam, like I said, it was designed for business school admission process, and basically 9 out of 10 MBA enrollments utilize the GMAT exam. And again, it's been used by over 6,000 business and management programs worldwide, and on average about 250,000 exams are delivered on an annual basis. Get the next one. So I wanted to talk to you about why GMAT exam is a strong academic predictor of success. So the GMAT, what we've done since 1953 is that we conduct predictive validity research. So what we do is, since 1953, year over year, we have taken candidates' GMAT scores and then also received their GPA 1 year into their business program. And we've been kind of correlating for the last year over year. And basically what we're able to do is, based on the GMAT total score, we're able to predict where this candidate would fall 1 year into their program. And that's based on the scores that we received year over year and based on where they are in the program 1 year. So again, that's why this exam is used. So for example, let me just show you how this process would work. So you come in, you submit your application to the admissions officer. So right now, the admissions officer, all they have to look at is your application. They have no other ways to right now until they look through all your parts of the application process. So once they look at your GMAT total score, which is your verbal and quant, and I'll talk more deeply into the different sections. So your GMAT total score, so now when a candidate comes in, based on whatever your total score, admissions officers can predict that this candidate's going to fall anywhere between a 3.2 and a 3.8 GPA 1 year into the program, just based on their score and the validity that GMAT has conducted for the last 80 plus years. Then once they factor in your other sections, your analytical writing, integrated reasoning, your undergrad GPA, your work experience, then they're able to, with the accurate predictor, they can predict that this candidate 1 year into the program, based on the different factors where they would ideally likely fall in as far as the GPA 1 year into the program. So the GMAT total score really provides the best kind of predictive validity for admissions officer, and they can kind of use that as they look through the rest of your application. So one, I'm going to talk through a couple myths. One, I need a high score. So just want to reiterate throughout this presentation, the GMAT exam is one part of the entire application process. The admissions officers look at everything: work experience, extracurricular activities, your program interests, what your motivation is for business school. So again, I want you to consider that, don't look at this as a barrier, it's an opportunity to kind of highlight different areas and know that it's not a make or break. This is one part of your overall application. So I want you to try to keep that perspective when you're applying for an MBA program. As I mentioned, we look at the admissions officers, look at all the different parts of your application. So again, really they want to highlight kind of what are you bringing to the program, right? So it's an opportunity. You're going to be able to contribute to the program based on your background, your experience, your reasons for pursuing a business degree. So the value of the GMAT exam. So as I mentioned, for candidates, it's very competitive when you're kind of applying for a program. So the GMAT exam gives you an opportunity to stand out. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, you can't control your undergrad major, your work experience, so this is an opportunity to really showcase your certain skills you want to highlight. It also gives you opportunity to open doors to schools and scholarships. So, many schools, based on a GMAT score, they have tuition, financial assistance, scholarship opportunities. So it really opens doors for a candidate. And really, the GMAT exam has been kind of compared to as like an MBA boot camp. So it really helps you prepare for the rigors and the time that you're going to need and the skills you would need that business admissions officers are looking for when they're screening candidates for their program. And then for schools, like I said, I mentioned earlier about why the GMAT is an academic predictor of success. So they're able to kind of use the exam to help predict the candidate's potential in the program. And then obviously with a competitive candidate pool, it helps you kind of separate, and they can compare you versus other candidates based on your score. One thing different, so I want to talk about now is how the GMAT exam is structured. So GMAT exam is a computer adaptive test, so it's very different from an SAT or an ACT where you took a number 2 pencil. The way this exam is structured is it's computer adaptive. So the question is based on your performance. So every question you answer, your next difficulty based on how you answer that question, they basically give you either a harder difficulty question or a easier difficulty question. And really, so basically, it's a more accurate and more efficient way to kind of test a candidate's performance. A lot of candidates come in with a lot of anxiety, so it kind of gives you an opportunity to kind of maybe start, not start so great, but then eventually, as you're kind of getting used to and getting comfortable in the zone, you're able to kind of fit into the score that you're supposed to. So I'll kind of walk you through kind of how this process works. So here's another myth that only the first 10 answers count. So just so you guys know, you're not able to skip or go back to answer any questions. So every question does count. So when you are preparing for the exam, make sure that you are preparing and studying and don't skip any questions. We also, part of the questions we ask, we throw test questions. So we're always throwing in some test questions, so change of content. So you may not know, so it's in your best interest to make sure when you're studying to answer every single question because you can't go back. But let me just show you how the computer adaptive works for you. So everybody starts with a medium difficulty level question. And let's just say you go and you get that answer wrong. Then the next question, it's a little bit easier, you get that wrong. And you kind of go back and forth, you get the question right, and as you kind of go question by question, you eventually get to the score that you're in the range you're supposed to be in, because it's adapting to your performance based on the question difficulty level. Another myth right here is, easy means a wrong answer. So again, I want to encourage you that, it's very subjective, and everyone's perception of what could be easy is very different. It could be a change of content, it could be a test question. So just because you may feel the question is easier doesn't necessarily mean you got the question wrong. So I think, just remember that the question is the test is adapting to how you're performing. So just one thing when you're studying, don't read too much into what you perceive as easy. It's a very subjective. So now I'm going to go into breaking down the actual exam, the different sections, and I'll kind of walk through a couple examples of types of questions that you'll have, and then I'll finish up with kind of ways to prepare, how we can help prepare for the exam. So the GMAT exam structure, so there's 4 sections: analytical writing, integrated reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and verbal reasoning. The total exam is about just over 3 hours now, and this was the original format. And basically, things that we've changed in our format is we've added optional 8-minute breaks between the IR and QR sections. So what this means is that if you don't use the break, it doesn't mean you get additional time for another section. So it's really, use it or lose it. So I encourage candidates, to in their study plan. It's really hard to sit in an exam for 3 hours straight. So utilize the breaks. Take even when you're studying. So this seems to be really resonating really well with candidates to have this break. So again, this was the format: analytical writing, IR, quant, and verbal. A couple years ago, GMAT, we gave flexibility for the candidates to choose the order of when they like to take the exam. So now you have the ability to take the original order, which is analytical writing, IR, quant, and verbal. But now we have the ability where you can take verbal first or quant first, really depending on, so again, we're not making the exam any less easier, but we want to give more flexibility for candidates to choose which makes sense for them, who they want to focus on. So what we've seen in the last 2 years, we're seeing more candidates trying to lean towards taking quant first for whatever reason. We don't have any specific insights, but I think it's really, customized to how you study and what you feel comfortable with. So, we have that flexibility now for candidates to choose their selection order. One thing that I would recommend, whatever order you decide that you think makes the most sense, plan your study habits, plan your study plan with that order. You don't want to switch up the order on test day. So again, here are the different sections, and what I wanted to hear is just the different sections of kind of the different types of questions. I'm going to walk through the different sample, but at the very bottom you'll see here, what the students are expected to be able to, skills they need, and why these sections are tested. So analytical writing, it's going to be basically you're going to have you have an argument, and you're going to basically take a position and defend it. So think about, you're going to have a lot of case studies or working groups in a program, and how you're able to kind of defend a position and an argument. Integrated reasoning is basically taking different sets of data, information, and how they correlate together. And then quant and verbal, you guys are all pretty familiar with those types of questions, sentence correction. So I'll kind of walk through a little bit the different sections. So analytical writing, again, you're going to have one paragraph. Again, you're going to basically define, and again, you have 30 minutes for this section. And again, this is not counted in your total score. So it's a separate score. Part of it is scored by a computer, the other part is scored by a human person. So that score is actually sent afterwards to the university as a separate score. Then the integrated reasoning, and what I'm going to show you here is just the types of graphs that you're going to have. So you're going to have basically all the different table analysis, multi-source reasoning, and all of these questions are related to one another. So as you're answering a question here, then the next question is going to be like, okay, how does this change this? So again, what we're testing here is how you're taking information, synthesizing and kind of analyzing and making decisions. Then the quant reasoning. So a myth here, we hear is that advanced math is required for the GMAT exam, and that's definitely a myth. For the quant section, all you really need is a 10th grade. If you've done 10th grade math, that's all you need. We're not basically testing your ability to master a subject. We expect you have those skills, but we're asking are you able to reason. We're not asking you to solve for a mean or median, but if this changes, how does that affect the mean? So again, you're not really solving for equations. So really, if you've done 10th grade math, you'll be totally fine for the exam. So an example here, one thing for the quant quant section, you're not able to bring any calculators to the testing center. You're going to have an on-screen calculator from your computer that looks like that. So as you're preparing and practicing, get familiar with those calculators. If you have a TI-83 or one of those financial calculators, you're not able to bring those into the testing center. So again, it's just basic math and it's really testing your logic to reason for an answer. So again, it's just a couple questions here. The one thing that I wanted to highlight here on the quantitative data sufficiency questions. So what we're here is you're basically trying to determine, do you have enough data here to determine an answer here? So one thing when you're studying for these types of questions, these 5 answer choices, A through E, these are going to be all the same answer choices for these types of questions. So again, you're basically trying to determine, do you have enough information here to solve that question? So for example, this is saying one student is selected to be at random to read. What is the probability that a boy will read? 2/3 of the students in the class are boys, 10 of the students in the class are girls. And I'll just, for time purposes, statement 1 alone is sufficient. So from that statement, you can determine the probability that a boy will read because we know 2/3 of the students in the class are boys. But 10 students in the class are girls, we're not able to determine what that probability a boy will be. If it said 10 students in the class are girls out of 50, then we'd be able to kind of determine. So I guess when you're preparing for these types of questions, just make sure you understand and practice learning that these are all the same answer choices you have for these types of questions. Verbal reasoning, I mean, these are going to be basically things that you've already acquired: reading comprehension, critical reasoning, sentence correction. And then, so let me talk about really how GMAT helps you prepare for the exam. We have practice exams as well. Sorry, go back. We have practice exams, so we have online practice, and these are all retired practice questions. We have resource guides on MBA.com, which I'll touch to shortly, and then we also have different prize packs for candidates to help with their study plans. So how do you register for the GMAT exam? I mentioned earlier that we own MBA.com, and that's where you would go to register for the exam. So when you go to MBA.com, create a profile, you can type in register for exam, and the exam is offered at Pearson VUE testing centers. We have about 600 of those testing centers globally. And simply you would go in there and type in your city or zip code, and it would pull up all the testing center locations that are available in your area, and then you can go ahead and register the exam. The exams are, you can take them in the morning, afternoon, sometimes weekend, depending on the availability. So if you're not a morning person, do not schedule the exam in the morning, take it in the afternoon. So just really understand kind of what you're comfortable with. And then, I would also, when you are registered for the exam, know where your testing center is, maybe even take a test, go there a day before or a week before just to see how far it is. The last thing you want to do is add any extra anxiety or stress on the day of an exam with traffic or underestimating how long it takes. And also to reiterate, this is a testing center, so there'll be other exams that are being administered there for other industries. So, really make sure that you get there early to prepare 30 minutes in advance. And there's a GMAT handbook that we can send out later. So just a few things to know about the exam. So the cost of the GMAT exam is $275, and you can take the exam up to 5 times in 12 months. The key thing here is that your score is good for 5 years, and when you take the exam, you have the ability to send your scores to up to 5 programs, which is included in the GMAT exam. So again, exam day expectations, and then a couple things that we've changed recently for the candidates. So we're kind of giving candidates more control. Now you have the ability, when you take the exam, after you finish, you get a preview of your unofficial score, which again is your verbal and quant. And that's what business schools admissions officers look at, that total score when part of the application process. But now candidates have an ability to kind of just preview their score, and you have 2 minutes to accept your score. So it's very important to know when you're preparing what ideal score range you're looking to achieve based on what program you're applying to. And then what happens is you have the ability to cancel your score. And why would a candidate cancel their score? They had a bad day, they bombed it, something happened personally, professionally. I mean, it could be a number of reasons, you just didn't do well and didn't perform at what you want. So we'll give you the ability to cancel your score. But, as I mentioned earlier, your score is good for 5 years. Just because you cancel it doesn't mean it's no longer existing. Your score is there. So you have the ability to cancel it, but you can also reinstate your score, over the past 5 years. And an example of a candidate that might want to reinstate their score, they took an exam, GMAT exam, and they didn't achieve the score that they wanted to, and then they're maybe 50 points off or 30 points off. Anyways, life gets in the way, they get busy, they think about now's a good time to go back to, pursue an MBA. They talk to the admissions officer, hey, I'm going to take the exam again, but I was 30 points out. Admissions officer will be like, you know what, let me look at your overall application. You know what, that score may actually work. You're 30 points out, but based on your other, as I mentioned, it's one part of your application process. When they look at your other kind of parts of the application, work experience, undergrad GPA, that score may be an opportunity you can reinstate. So again, we're trying to give candidates more control and comfort, and then be able to kind of talk through those scores if you need to. And I just mentioned the reinstate, and again, your score is good for 5 years. So again, it's something that I'd really want you to kind of know that. And then one thing that we've added now for those that have taken the exam or plan to take it maybe multiple times is we added an enhanced score report. And what this enhanced score report does is it breaks down of your performance based on each section, how much time you're spending on a question, and kind of what your percentile ranking is. So as I mentioned earlier, you may have taken the exam and you may have not gotten the score that you were hoping for, but this report could be something you could share with an admissions officer and say, hey, you know what, I didn't achieve the score, but hey, look at my integrated reasoning section, I've done very well, my verbal is very strong, I'm a little bit here, here's my background. So this could be an opportunity also for you to show an admissions officer kind of areas that you think that you want to highlight, your strengths, or this could also help you prepare and focus on areas that you struggle with for the next time you take the exam. So it's a really good enhanced score report that we've added for candidates that you can purchase after the exam. And as I mentioned, how does GMAT help prepare? We don't offer prep courses. There are providers that have those courses. But what we do is, if you have not one thing, homework I would take away from today's webinar is go to MBA.com and download the official starter kit. So the official starter kit is basically an official guide and 2 full-length online practice exams. So again, these are exams and you can take them, and each one of these exams has the same score report that I was showing you. So for the practice exams, you can download a score report and really help you kind of prepare for the exam. So I would recommend, as you're kind of planning for your study plan for the GMAT, download the free resources, the free exams. Take the first exam, maybe just cold, just to kind of see where you are, areas you want to focus on. And then if you think you need additional practice, we have 4 other practice exams that you could purchase. But I would really encourage you to start. And these are all retired GMAT exam questions. So again, and what we've seen, and again, we have you in their official guide. So if you think that after you take the exams that you really need to work on verbal or quant or even integrated reasoning, we have different official guides to help you prepare for those sections. And then I think just last thing I want to really talk about is just on MBA.com. I would definitely register, not just for the free resources, but we have a lot of webinars on preparing for test day, tips. We have blogs, we have discussion groups. It's a good way to kind of just talk to others that are kind of in your same shoes in the same community, just to kind of see what they're doing and some of the challenges. So, and we have other digital events outside of today that I think could be helpful. But other than that, just wanted to leave this open for any questions, and I guess thank you for having me today.
Thank you for joining us. Kylie, do we have any questions?
Well, why don't we start, Lindsay, with talking a little bit about what Kelley Direct is looking for in terms of tests. Do we have any averages, or kind of what do we look for?
Okay, great. Yes, so for our application process, we do require either the GMAT or the GRE. Just wanted to mention that we do also accept the GRE. Most applicants do take the GMAT. The minimum score that we tend to look for, and again, as Dominic mentioned, we are looking at your overall profile, so not just your test score. We are looking at your previous academic performance, your work experience, recommenders, things of that nature, and just sort of your overall profile. But in terms of the actual test score, we do sort of look for a minimum of around 600 on the GMAT. The average score for admitted applicants into our program tends to be somewhere between 640 and 660, depending on the entrance term that we're looking at. But yeah, the 600 is kind of the average or the minimum that we tend to look for, but most applicants are scoring a little above that.
Thank you, Lindsay. Ramnik, do you have any suggestions? What would be your number one kind of suggestion to start for people who are just overwhelmed and not sure where to start with their test preparation?
So yeah, the first thing I would do is go to mba.com just to create an account, and again, you can start learning about different application tips. But I think I would recommend downloading the official starter kit. Again, it's an official guide, and it has practice questions, and I think that'll kind of give you a good initial feel for what the exam is like and where you kind of are. I think that would be the best thing to start on the official guide, but really mba.com to really learn about application tips and programs, identifiers, as well as learning about kind of getting part of a blog or community.
Great, thank you. Another good question would be, is there a certain amount of time that maybe I should be preparing, or kind of is there an average?
Yeah, so let me go here. So again, really, the more time that you can dedicate to studying for the exam, typically, but what I've done here is kind of just, we laid out here kind of average of scores based on different regions of the world. Typically in the United States, candidates spend about 50 hours preparing for the GMAT exam. But again, a lot of it's depending on your work life and other factors which you're able to dedicate. So, I think 50 hours seems to be kind of an average of what candidates, over like an 8-week study plan, typically 2-3 months. But if you're able, as you can see, other parts of the world, you can see the average is a little bit higher for certain and for their grades. So obviously, it's really depending on your learning style. But if you can commit minimum 50, I think you'll be in a good shape to kind of prepare for the exam.
Great. Is there anything else that you think applicants should really have a good handle on before they start signing up and preparing to take the test?
Yeah, so I think really you want to understand all the requirements of the program that you're looking to apply to. One thing I would encourage before even getting the exam is talk to the admissions officers. Give them a call. Talk to them. Be like, hey, I'm interested in your program. This is kind of where I'm at in my career, is my background. I'm thinking about the GMAT exam, so I think you want to develop those relationships and really talk to the schools, make sure it's the right fit for you and understanding it, and then, start preparing for the GMAT. We have the resources, but I think it's really what are your motivations and really connecting with the programs that you think are a fit for you.
And I have a question about if you're worried about a specific section of the test, such as the quant section, is there a way to practice on a specific section?
Yeah, so when you get to the, we have the official guides. So if you want to download, you can purchase a official guide for the quant section or individual sections, and there'll be practice questions for the various different sections. So it wouldn't just be for the sentence, for the sentence correction or data sufficiency. For the quant, it would be for all the questions combined in one. So you have all questions just focused on that particular section. So I think to answer your question, it wouldn't be specific to one part of the section. It'd be all the questions that are comprised in that section. But you can purchase additional data there. And then also when you go to the website, we have practice questions as well that you can kind of just test out. But again, the official guide and the official starter kit would be kind of your best bet. And I think just to reinforce that, you have an enhanced score reporting. So basically, you're getting the answers, right? So that's a good way to understand how to get to an answer. We'll give you reasonings, explanations. So I think that's an area to kind of focus on when you're preparing.
Okay, and that looks like all of our questions for today. So I'm going to hand it back to Lindsay to wrap up.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for joining us. Just wanted to let you know that we did record this session, so we will be sending out the recording of today's session as well as posting it on our website. Wanted to thank Ramnik again for joining us. Thank you so much for being here and providing this valuable insight. If you do have questions, either about program-specific questions, those can be directed to either myself or Kelley. Or if you're already started the application process and you know who your admissions representative is, you can feel free to reach out to them. That would either be myself or one of my colleagues. If you have more test-specific questions, we are happy to sort of field those and shuffle those to Ramnik, and he has graciously offered to answer questions after today's session ends if you do have additional questions. But Just wanted to thank you all for joining, and we look forward to working with you on your applications. Have a great day.